the Prime Minister often says, no one can do to Canada the kind of bad things to be against the good things. This will lower prices. Could.
Wow. I feel confident. Do you? We're back to question period today, where Steve McKinnon was so flustered he couldn't even talk properly. That tends to be a problem for Liberals these days, probably because of all of the gaslighting and lies they have to force out of their mouths. Let's take a look.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. and promising this would generate $20 billion in revenue. It turns out it was actually elbows down, and the Prime Minister broke his promise and secretly cancelled those tariffs. Now Trump is threatening 50% tariffs on Canadian steel, which will devastate Canada's steel industry and put thousands of steel workers out of their jobs. Can the Prime Minister look steel workers in the eye, tell them it wasn't actually elbows down, and how much money his tariffs will actually generate?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
In this House and the Prime Minister, we will fight, Mr. Speaker, against these unjustified and illegal tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium, Mr. Speaker. We're going to protect our workers and our industry, and the Minister of Industry already spoke about that over the weekend. And we're going to build a strong Canada, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build a Canada of tomorrow, a confident Canada, a prosperous Canada, a Canada that we can all be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
And we're off to question period, where the Conservatives ask the same question about, hey, you guys effectively canceled all of the tariffs back on April 16th, but you were telling everybody how patriotic they need to be, and it was all for naught. And now Trump's saying, oh yeah, you know, we're going to increase the tariffs on aluminum by 50% and steel and all this stuff. And the response from the Liberals is just Champagne standing up and yelling. Not yelling anything even productive. He's just yelling. And what is he yelling? Well, we're going to be prosperous and we're going to be productive. Wow. I feel confident. Do you?
The member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It doesn't matter which Liberal stands up to answer a question in this Parliament or last Parliament. They just actually never answer a question, Mr. Speaker. And it's not complicated. Elbows up was dollar-for-dollar tariffs. Has the Prime Minister already broken his promise to steelworkers, or was elbows up simply just fake news? And now we're facing the Trump tariffs, and steelworkers from coast to coast to coast are in serious jeopardy of losing their jobs. It's a simple question. How much money from these quote-unquote elbows-up tariffs have they generated?
Well, it's funny. I'm glad that Mr. Seebeck actually said it. He's said what we're all thinking and we're all saying. Why don't you guys ever answer a frickin' question? And this guy actually goes back to something Damien Keurig said, that understand that you were put here by Canadians. Understand that you need to take that responsibility seriously. But this is the issue. The Liberals don't seem to take anything seriously unless it puts money back in their own pockets. So the question is why don't you guys ever answer a bloody question? All you do is you stand up and you say something nonsensical in most cases that has nothing to do with the question at hand. So I'm glad Mr. Seebeck actually said that, so kudos.
There's a lot of anxiety across the country, particularly when it comes to the steel and aluminum sectors. That's why over the weekend I've been in contact with industry leaders as well as union leaders, and we will continue to make sure that we protect their jobs. In order to be in solution mode, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that Canadian steel and aluminum is used in our major infrastructure projects. That is why steel workers have said over the weekend, at a time where our steel and aluminum sectors are being hit by massive U.S. tariffs, this is the kind of leadership we've been demanding, and it has delivered.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
To be clear, the Prime Minister
promised elbows up against U.S. tariffs. He promised dollar for dollar counter tariffs. He promised it would generate $20 billion in revenue, but he broke those promises. He secretly dropped counter tariffs to effectively zero. He stopped fighting back against President Trump pretty early on, and now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, a direct attack against our workers, their livelihoods, and the Canadian economy. So if the Prime Minister really is elbows up, if he's really fighting back, can he tell our steelworkers how many dollars have been collected in counter-tariff revenue from the U.S.? How many dollars? What's the number, Mr. Speaker?
So the response from Jolie is, well, we're going to be using their steel in our infrastructure projects. What are they? We talked about this train going to Quebec. What else you got? What else do you have? You know, there's steel and pipelines, but you don't seem to want to build pipelines. Maybe we'll get an update after today and the Prime Minister meets with the premiers, but God, are you kidding me? Yay, we want to see leadership. This is the type of leadership we want to see. We want to see Canada using our own steel in our own infrastructure projects. That's great. We need to know what those infrastructure projects actually are in order to understand if that's actually going to be used. Because right now, all we keep hearing is nation building projects, nation building projects, nation building products. What are they?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague and congratulate her for the fact that she will be now my critic. So good news, looking forward to working with her. Indeed, the comments coming out of the White House are preoccupying. That being said, no executive order has been signed yet. So we take these comments very seriously, but we are working on all scenarios. That's why the Prime Minister is in Saskatoon meeting with the premiers of the provinces and territories. And that's also why we will make sure that we execute our plan, fight, protect, and build. Thank you.
The Honourable
Okay, so one thing I will give to Jolie is that Trump hasn't actually signed the executive order yet. He told everybody he was going to do this at a recent rally, and allegedly this will take effect on Wednesday, but he hasn't actually signed this order yet. Now, this is where I give her the benefit of the doubt, because we've seen in the past that Trump sometimes says things and says that they're going to happen, only to completely backtrack either the day before or the day of and either push them off or completely change his mind. So unless Sharpie has been put to paper with Donald Trump, you can't take everything he says verbatim. But at the same time, you have to actually assume that what he's going to say is going to come to fruition, because otherwise you're putting yourself in a very poor position. But, you know, this is the thing. If Trump was so respectful of Mark Carney, if Mark Carney was going to be so tough on Donald Trump and make him bend to his will, why is Trump continuing to do the exact same thing now as he did before Mark Carney took power? Oh, right. That's right. Because Mark Carney, being this, you know, big experienced banker, doesn't seem to amount to a hill of beans when it comes to Donald Trump.
On revenue from those counter tariffs, so we can assume it's effectively zero. And if the steel tariffs weren't bad enough, the Prime Minister is determined to keep the industrial carbon tax on our steel production, driving up the cost of steel production here at home, which perhaps is really no surprise given the Prime Minister said he claimed that Canadians don't even use that much steel, as if we don't use dishwashers and fridges and cars and pots and pans and baby strollers and housing infrastructure, all of which are made with steel, Mr. Speaker. So how can the Prime Minister claim to be elbows up for workers and fighting for affordability while keeping a punishing carbon tax on our Canadian steel producers?
Man, Raquel Dancho, she came to play. It's good that she's back in the House. I'm glad she got reelected, and B, I'm glad she is back to playing a very prominent role in Question Period and in Pierre's team, because she is a firecracker when she gets rolling. So criticize the fact that they didn't give any sort of dollar amount for how much these tariffs are supposedly supposed to have raised. So she says, fine, I'm assuming zero. And he claims to care about steel workers. Mark Carney, when he said on a talk show, well, we don't even use steel anymore.
What the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used to.
Again, this is the economist. This is the guy that's supposed to understand trade. And he doesn't seem to understand at all, that we use steel in a lot in Canada. We use steel a lot all over this planet. But, who needs steel workers, right? So how can you say that, well, we don't really use steel workers, and then in the next breath, you go and visit a steel plant and say, we really value the work that you do? Well, you obviously don't, because you have no idea what the implications are in the world economy when it comes to Canadian steel.
Take no lesson from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. We have put in place as a country, as a nation, the largest counter-tariff in our nation history, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers in the steel industry, in the aluminum industry, in the forestry sector, in all the sectors of our economy, to defend our workers and our industry, Mr. Speaker. We should all in this room, in this House, stand proudly to defend Canadian workers, defend Canadian industry, and build Canada strong. That's Canadian, Mr. Speaker.
We will take no lessons from the Conservatives. We've put in the largest amount of counter tariffs in the Canadian history to protect our workers that Mark Carney effectively reduced to zero on April 16th. Those ones? Are those the ones you're talking about, Champagne? Yeah, doesn't sound too effective to me, because if they were, why is Trump increasing them even more?
Honourable member for Flamborough, Glenbrook, Brant North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised elbows up, promising dollar-for-dollar tariffs on the U.S. that would collect $20 billion. The Prime Minister broke that promise, giving Canadians elbows down when he dropped the tariffs on the U.S. to effectively zero. Now Trump is threatening to double tariffs on Canadian steel to 50%, attacking Canadian workers, their jobs, their livelihoods, and our industry. Can the Prime Minister tell our steel workers how much has been collected from tariffs on the U.S.?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
The member on the other side is misinformed, but let's talk about the great things we've been doing for Canadians lately. Mr. Speaker, last week we introduced as the first thing in this House a tax reduction for the middle class, Mr. Speaker. 22 million Canadians will benefit from that measure, Mr. Speaker. Not only we did that, but we also make sure that we remove the GST for first-time home buyers on their first house up to $1 million, Mr. Speaker. Those are measures that makes a difference in the life of Canadians. Those are measures that makes a difference in every region of Canada. Those are measures that build a Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough, Glenbrook, Brant North.
So did you hear that, steel workers in Hamilton? Not a number in that arrogant answer. Well, I don't think that's surprising, given that this is a government whose Prime Minister believes that Canadians don't actually use steel in their daily lives. But for workers and businesses in my community of Hamilton who are looking for the support that might have come from the revenue of those counter tariffs, they're being left empty-handed, and they are worried about their future. So let me ask again, if the Liberals are truly fighting back, can they tell us how much has been collected from tariffs? How much? Just a number.
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, we know that there's a lot of anxiety across the country in the steel and aluminum sector, particularly in Hamilton. That's why I was in contact with the CEO of ArcelorMittal, the FASCO, over the weekend, talking to the head also of the Canadian steelworkers, making sure that our MPs also from Hamilton are really on board and as they're fighting for the jobs in their own communities. Mr. Speaker, this rhetoric coming out of the White House is extremely preoccupying, but meanwhile, no executive order has been signed. That's why we'll continue to fight with counter tariffs to protect our workers and to make sure that we build national projects.
So just want to give a shout out to Member of Parliament Dan Muse. Great questions and a great clap back at Champagne here. Because it was an arrogant answer. All he said in response to Dan Muse's first question was, I believe the member's misinformed. But I'm going to go on and tell you about the tax cut that is only going to give you about, $37 in, per month. goodie to everybody, but all of that is going to disappear because of the increase in this $500 billion budget. So it doesn't even matter. And number two, if you're really fighting back against these tariffs from the US, all of that would be collected in these counter tariffs that you're allegedly putting in. So how much? How much have you collected from these counter tariffs? Shouldn't be difficult to actually find that number. But the response from Jolie is, well, we understand there's anxiety, but no executive order has been signed yet, so don't worry about it. Wow. That's what you told the CEO of Dofasco when you were talking to him? Oh, well, Trump hasn't signed this order, so don't worry about it. That's what you told him. Wow. And it's a really pointy question. This is why the Conservatives keep asking this about the $20 billion and how much have you collected? Because this is very central to the point that the Liberals keep saying, we've been fighting back. We've been tough on Trump. We've been fighting back with dollar for dollar tariffs. Well, if you've actually been fighting back, then the measure of that is how much money you've collected. So how much have you collected in tariffs? It's a simple question. And the fact that they don't want to answer should tell Canadians all they need to know.
It's been 10 years, and I have been listening to Canadians, and the minister should listen to Canadians who can't find a job. There are fewer new entrepreneurs than ever. Productivity and growth are down. Forget the scissors, forget the pruners, hum them. We need a chainsaw to cut through all this red tape. It's time to clear a path for Canadians to be successful and to hire. So why do the Liberals keep choking Canadian workers and businesses with their red tape?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister often says, no one can do to Canada the kind of bad things to be against the good things that Canadians can do for themselves. The Prime Minister and ministers are in Saskatoon today doing the hard work of removing red tape in the form of internal trade barriers so we can have one Canadian economy and not 13 Canadian economies. This will lower prices up to 15%, productivity up to 7%, and add $200 billion to the economy, Mr. Speaker. That's eliminating red tape. That's standing up for Canada.
The Honourable Member.
Someone should go check on Steve McKinnon. Are you okay? Like, seriously, are you okay? I thought I was having a stroke listening to that. The Prime Minister always says, and the prices, go up, and they could a 50. Okay. When you have your pre-rehearsed answers and you still can't even get them right, I don't know what to tell you, Liberals. I really don't. You can't even answer your own non-answers properly. Steve, if you can't stand up and actually answer a question, maybe you shouldn't be House Leader. Maybe you shouldn't be in Cabinet. Maybe you shouldn't even be a Member of Parliament. Because the new MPs on the Conservative side seem to be able to stand up and ask the question without sounding like they're having a stroke. How come you can't answer it?
Knocking on doors that met Foothills families who are in tears because they're losing their jobs and they're losing their businesses because of the Liberal attacks on Canadian energy. These are small business owners who employ hundreds of thousands of Canadians right across this country. They need real action, no more political games. Like the provinces, they want to build because pipelines mean paychecks, mean a growing economy, and energy independence. So why are the Liberals the only holdout? The Prime Minister is meeting with premiers in Saskatchewan today. Will he approve a pipeline at that meeting?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is indeed meeting the 13 provincial and territorial leaders today with one clear goal: to support nation-building projects that bring Canadians together by ensuring that they are expedited but also efficiently reviewed. As the Prime Minister said, any project will need to get consensus from provinces, Indigenous communities and private partners, and will be subject to assessment, but Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has also been clear: it's time to build in Canada, and build is what we're going to do.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Well, the Prime Minister may be meeting, but he sure isn't listening. While he dawdles, the opportunities to unleash Canadian energy pass us by because of the Liberals' anti-energy legislation that blocks infrastructure and blocks investment. Like the provinces, they want to build. Canadian workers want to work. Canadians want energy independence, but C-69 blocks pipelines, 48 blocks shipping. The job-killing carbon tax, or the industrial carbon tax, is punishing our energy sector. Will the Prime Minister end his attacks on Canadian oil and gas and repeal his anti-energy legislation today?
Hear, hear, hear. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we were served another reminder just this weekend of the threats that we face in terms of trade around the world. This government will fight, protect, and build. This Prime Minister is in Saskatoon today with 13 provincial and territorial leaders to build one Canadian economy, not 13. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we intend to build this country. We intend to build major national projects in this country, and we intend to put Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, and Canadian workers to work building the country that we live in.
So notice how McKinnon specifically mentions the aluminum industry. Notice how he specifically mentions the steel industry, but he never mentions the oil and gas industry. This is hardly a surprise, since there's so much legislation from the Liberals that have done their best to cap it, to shrink it, to squander it. So this is what Canadians want to know. And he even says, well, there's more stuff coming in from the U.S. and we're getting threats from the U.S. regarding trade. This is all the more reason for us to get pipelines, get them in the ground, get oil and gas into them, and get them to tidewater so we can actually effectively export them to clients other than the United States. And then we'll actually get market price for them instead of selling them at a massive discount. Gee, wouldn't that be an idea? But, this is the same Liberal government where Justin Trudeau says there's no business case. Well, Mark Carney, Canada is watching, and we're going to be watching to see what you do and what you say at this Premier's meeting. And if you don't say, yes, we're going to get a pipeline into the ground, then you're going to prove what Canadians already suspect, is that you're no better than Justin Trudeau.